Hi everybody, welcome to Exploring the Relationship Between Teaching and Learning. My name is Janice and along with my partner Melissa McDown-Smith, we're going to be doing our critical dialogue to Illuminate to share some insights into chapters 6 and 7.
Hi everyone!
So I will start by talking about a relational view, teaching and learning, which is chapter 6. So some of the key points from this chapter really revolve around the information transmission, teacher-focused approach to teaching. As we've heard already, it's strongly and positively associated with surface and non-deep approaches to learning. In the picture that I've given on the slide, I've given a picture of an iceberg, which is fairly basic but explains a lot. We know that 1/10 of an iceberg's mass can be seen above submerged. So in this graphic, the tip of the iceberg represents surface learning. So this is where students are aiming to reproduce material in a test or exam rather than really actually understand it. It's not going to have relevance to them years down the road, but it's relevant right now to get that information on a test paper. Whereas conceptual change, student-focused approach to teaching is positively associated with deep and non-surface approaches to learning. So this is where the students actually understand. So it embodies a comprehensive, full approach to learning. The authors identify some great conceptual change, student-focused strategies to teaching in higher education, which are listed on page 123 of the text. These include things such as enthusiasm for the subject, recognizing the importance of context and adapting teaching accordingly, and encouraging learning for understanding. The 7 items are actually really good for teachers to review and ask themselves, do I do these? So the authors also discuss how students' approaches to learning are seen to be more a relation between student and context than characteristics of the student, and that student learning may be influenced by changing the context or students' perceptions of it. In a discussion board post recently from Janice, she spoke about how she will sometimes take her students outdoors to have a class. This change in the learning environment can be a refreshing approach to students, which helps them to engage more in the topic and influence their perception of their learning outcomes. So some broader issues that we found from this chapter is, are we really preparing students to be able to deal with complex problems that exist in the real world? And also, are we preparing teachers to be able to offer conceptual change, the student-focused approach to teaching? If we want students to be able to deal with the complex problems that exist in the real world, we need post-secondary graduates who have the ability to think critically, question known concepts, and be creative. These abilities are developed through deep learning. So if teachers can engage students in deep learning, they are better preparing them for future challenges. We want our teachers to offer the conceptual change, student-focused approaches, but maybe they don't know how. So teacher development programs should focus on helping teachers learn more teaching methods, as this can help teachers develop a conceptual change, student-focused approach to teaching.
Yeah, Janice, when you were talking about that, it made me think of one professor I know who works at the University of Waterloo. I don't know if he's formally participated in any teacher training, but he does a great job of, I think, engaging students and providing some of those deep learning opportunities. I know, for example, there's a couple of tricky concepts in the course that I think it's difficult for students to wrap their heads around, and so he gives them kind of a foundation and then asks them a question, and okay, who got answer A and who got answer B, and okay, if you got answer A, turn to the people who got answer B and explain it to them because you're the ones who get it. So little things like that. I think we think deep learning is this huge, big thing, which it is, but I think it can be implemented in some very real and specific ways.
I think that's a great way to build capacity amongst the students as well. That they're going to take ownership of their learning and they're willing to share that amongst their peers.
Yeah, he's consistently rated as a great prof by the students.
Well, there has to be a good reason for it, right?
Yeah.
Another interesting thing for me is working at Niagara College. Niagara College has undergone some tremendous growth in the past few years. So what they've done is a bunch of new construction on campus. So we have these beautiful buildings, but unfortunately they've sort of traded in the small classrooms are being replaced by lecture halls to accommodate these students. You know, with more students comes more tuition. And I think, unfortunately, we're losing sight of our purpose as an institute of higher learning, and it's turning it more into a business. And I think that that's a common trend we're seeing these days.
Yes, I'd have to agree with that, yeah.
Another interesting thing, I know we talked about the TED Talks, and although it hasn't been discussed so much in class, Jasheet had us watch something about Bill Gates, about teachers need feedback. And I think that's really true, because I don't know that teachers necessarily realize what type of teaching that they're doing. You know, the conceptual change, student-focused approach to teaching sounds amazing, and people probably think that they're doing that. But maybe if they had some real feedback, they would understand that maybe that's not what they're offering. So he also discusses putting a video in every classroom so teachers can figure out where they need to improve. And it's not only just diagnosing where they need to improve, but also giving them the tools they need to act on this, diagnosis. So he's suggesting, Bill Gates would suggest, watch a video of the best person in the world who's using the conceptual change student-focused approach.
Yeah.
So again, it's not that they are, it could be that the teachers are maybe not aware of their own approach to teaching and learning.
Yeah, well, I think that makes a lot of sense, and kind of along the similar lines, we found an article that I know we're going to put the link up to later on so that our classmates can access it. But it was a recent article from 2013 from the University of Toronto, and it talked about programs. I think that this was mostly for graduate students, and it talked about how the importance of when you're doing a teacher training program, that the program should expose participants to kind of deep learning. So I think that links really well back to the point you made earlier that their teachers need to be prepared for this. It's maybe not a natural kind of skill set. The other interesting thing about the article is that being part of a teaching team where teachers could discuss pedagogy and learning and teaching design with others was found to be a really important variable as well. And I think that links back to what you were talking about in terms of feedback. And sometimes your peers and seeing other people kind of in action or bouncing ideas can give you some great feedback.
Absolutely.
So, we ready to go on to Chapter 7?
Let's do it.
Okay, so moving on to Chapter 7. So this chapter looked at the relationship between faculty research and teaching approaches. And so kind of the question is, what's the relationship? Is there even one? And so Prosser in this article notes that some people think it's a positive relationship. Some people think maybe there's no relationship. And then he doesn't specifically identify this, but it's come up in our class before that potentially is there a negative relationship? Does research take time away from teaching? So he thought, and he and his colleagues thought, that it's really the teacher's intentions of teaching or their experience of teaching that's related to the student's experience or approach to learning. So teachers who had the ITTF approach, the more info transmission approach, led to students with a surface approach. Teachers with the opposite approach led to more deeper approaches to learning on the student side. And so because it's the intentions and kind of the experience of teaching, maybe versus some of the specific strategies and things like that are used, Prosser and his colleagues decided to also consider how the individual, so the I guess, professor and instructor, how they viewed the subject matter. Did they view it in whole or did they view it in parts? And they interviewed 37 academics across a wide range of fields and asked them questions about their experiences of teaching and research. So what was their approach to teaching? What was their, what kind of research were they doing? And also what their understanding of their subject matter was. And essentially, they found that though there was a relationship between the approach to research and the approach to teaching, and it was mediated by the understanding of subject matter. So people who had a very they saw their subject matter in parts and they were doing their research in parts or isolated problems, usually had a more info transmission approach to teaching versus researchers who were they saw their kind of research as a whole, kind of about fundamental issues and maybe conceptual change in their field, understood their subject matter as a whole, and then their teaching, usually approach to teaching was more of the conceptual base change. So that's kind of their study in a nutshell, and what they found with that. Are you chatting about the baseball guy or is that me, Janice?
Well, I do love the baseball guy. And I can see how this would relate to being a coach of a baseball team for sure. Good coaches have to develop the overall set of skills for the player. It's not just, we're going to go out, we're going to win. There's certain pieces of it that you have to put together in order to make that happen. So, they're going to help each player improve from where they're at. If you have a player who seems to be lacking confidence in something, you're going to work on their confidence. If you have a player who is not hitting well, you're going to work on their batting dynamics. A good coach is able to explain to a player why making a change can impact the overall game. So it's kind of like the teacher who is focused on conceptual change. They are trying to improve the overall student and their thinking processes rather than just their specific knowledge. While other coaches may focus on specific elements of the game and will have players all doing the same drills, but won't or can't explain to the players how these drills relate to the game.
Yeah, so I think when we were kind of chatting earlier, we both saw a bit of that link. I think sports are on our mind with the Olympics coming up and everything like that. So, looking at some of the broader issues, I know we have some of them down in here, but do you want to elaborate on the first one?
Sure. I know that, we thought that some additional research would be needed, that this is an interesting study, but this is only one study with 37 academics. We looked at the actual studies, and the academics who are participants in the study came from a range of universities in the UK and Australia. It would be interesting to see if these findings are replicated in other countries, especially Canada.
Oh, I definitely agree. I don't know a lot about the environment in the UK and Australia and how they might specifically impact the findings of this study. Kind of along a similar line, one thing that would be interesting to consider is, does an individual's approach to teaching change if their approach to research changes? So I know some people really follow the same line of research their whole careers, but others may switch around as they find new and interesting problems. And so if someone's approach to research maybe became, focused on the wholes and on that conceptual change, would their understanding of the subject matter change, and therefore their approach to teaching change as well?
Right, yeah. So really, what does this relationship look like if research is not in the mix?
Yes, I think that was another thing we were wondering about.
As we've noted, oftentimes we've noted that there's many people in our cohort that are teaching at college level, and they may not be engaged in research. Does that mean that they're not engaged with their subject matter? Does that mean that they can't present it in terms of wholes? I would doubt it.
Yeah, and that's an interesting, if research isn't in the picture, like you said, does understanding of subject matter, is it even more relevant? Is it less relevant? And I think even at universities, there might be instructors who are sessional instructors, so they're hired just to teach and may possibly not doing any research on the side. So I'd classify that group as well. Something I thought about, probably because where I work, the University of Waterloo is very big on innovation and driving ideas forward, is sometimes it seems to me like innovation, especially the types that you can commercialize and make money off of, are focused on specific problems, and then they develop specific solutions to those problems. To me, that speaks for a need for research to be focused on the parts. Let's look at this specific situation, develop something that's innovative, and then kind of move it forward. So to me, it seems like there might be a little bit of almost conflict between, do we want people doing this broader research because that potentially leads to better learning for students, or is it more important to do this research that maybe leads to innovation? We're making some tenuous connections here, but I did see that kind of question pop up when I was reading this chapter. In my mind, at least, the question popped up.
Yeah, for sure. And I think another piece, too, is about funding for research programs and research projects. Sometimes they're looking for specifics rather than wholes, right?
Right.
So I think another thing we talked about was if a certain type of research leads to deep learning for students, there could be an expectation that to be hired at a post-secondary institution, you have to engage in a certain type of research. So if that happens, are we setting ourselves up for potential discrimination? If I have two instructors and they've both engaged in research and one has engaged in a certain type of research which focuses on a specific problem where somebody's looking at moving the profession together as a whole, what would the implications of this be?
Mm-hmm.
So we do have a few more resources that our cohort may be interested in, our classmates may be interested in, and we welcome you to click on the embedded links. We'll include these, of course, in our presentation as well. We do have a few questions.
Yeah, so we'll leave these questions for you guys. If you want to speak to these questions, that's great. If there's something else in our dialogue that piqued your curiosity and you want to comment on that, I think that's great too. Well, I think
thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Looking forward to chatting with you on the forums.